Good evening, Goeienaand, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Good to be with you tonight. We missed you last week, but we are glad that we are here tonight to hear about what's happening and to provide solutions. One of the most important things for these programs is when we hear about challenges and problems in our society, we believe, as the ACDP, that the Lord has given us solutions to those problems. So we're going to hear from you tonight. As you can see, I am flying solo. My deputy is flying from Ethiopia to Johannesburg as we speak. So we have another great program. We have a guest tonight. We have two guests who will be joining us. And they are not strangers to you. But before we talk about the subject for tonight and introduce our guest to you, we want to hear from you as we say, Dumelang bagaetsho, le perile. So good to have you with us. So that is from me with my greetings. The Lord bless you. Let me hear who is the first today, Tabang Mushidi, who says, good afternoon, President and ACDP family. Good evening, Tabang. And we have Palesa Yates, who says, Dumelang Muruti Meshwe, and Muruti Tring, who's still flying from Ethiopia to South Africa. He says, Absheni, Molweni, Sanibonani, Tobela, Triple A, Goeienaand, ACDP family, that is Palesa Yates, sending a greetings. Now we have Nora Mali, who says, good evening, Honorable President, Deputy President, and my beloved ACDP family. Next, we have Kars van der Bijl Meth, who says, good evening to our leadership and fellow ACDP family. Warm greetings from the Meth family of Port Shepstone in the Ugu region. And then Norman Konza, our counselor in Joburg, says, Shalom, Shalom, the Honorable President, the Honorable DP in absentia, and ACDP family. Good evening, sir. Bani Bernardo, good evening, Mr. President, ACDP, and the Deputy President from beautiful Buffalo City. Good evening, Bani. Lysander Dobson, good evening, leaders and ACDP family. Good evening, Lysander. Kiwi Fruit, Maluleke, good evening, Honorable President. We are looking forward to another informative session with you and the ACDP family. Good evening, sir. Ketwa Sogani says, good evening, President and ACDP family. Ketwa and Candice Sogoni from Tata saying hello and hope everyone had a blessed day. Yes, sir, we did. Thank you. Demetrius Dudley, good evening, Mr. President and ACDP colleagues. Good evening, sir. Now, those are the greetings for tonight. And others, I'm sure they are late, but it's good to have you all tonight. And we welcome those greetings. Something that has been very topical is what has been happening in our country, particularly our township. And I'm not sure why, particularly in Gauteng. We have been having reports of food poisoning because of contaminated food that children mainly were buying from Spaza shops. On the way here, I received another unfortunate report. 4-year-old Enhle Mamfengu is fighting for her life in hospital after eating biscuits from a local Spaza shop on Friday. Enhle from Langaville in Ekurhuleni is in Pulusong Hospital, where doctors diagnosed her with food poisoning. Her mother, Andiswa Mamfengu, told Scroll Africa that her daughter had been fine before eating the biscuits. She started complaining about stomach cramps and had a fever. She was shaking, having trouble breathing, and getting weaker, she said. When she went to the tuck shop to check, now this is the mother saw the expiry date had been scratched off. No expiry date on the biscuits. So the assumption we can make is that they had expired. And this person, the owner of the Spaza shop, scratched off, erased the date, expiry date. Now, it should be a criminal offense to do that. We are going to watch closely how the police are going to deal with this one. It's not only the fact that a child is hospitalized now, we hope that she will recover. But it should be a criminal offense, and we will ensure that that becomes the case. That removing the dates, not just sell by, but expiry date from a product that should be consumed by the public should be criminalized. So Langaville residents are now demanding that the city of Ekurhuleni inspect local tax shops and close those that do not comply with health regulations. Community leader Simpiwe Mapanga is concerned about the increase in food poisoning incidents in the area. It's clear, he says, that the city of Ekurhuleni has stopped inspecting tax shops to ensure they follow the rules. Inspectors would have found biscuits with missing expiry dates if they were doing their job. We won't wait for another child's life to be in danger. We demand that the city check these shops for compliance. If they fail, they must leave. Now, maybe let me stop there. I'm sure you have ideas that you are going to recommend even tonight. It is not the first time we talk about this issue, and government seems reluctant to do anything. Now, we know that the Naledi children who unfortunately lost their lives after eating snacks they bought from a Spaza shop. And they had one of their friends who was hospitalized while they were while they were dead. The interesting thing is that, or the sad thing is that, during their funeral on Sunday, that sixth friend that was in hospital has died also. Now, the question is, how many more children should die before government does something? How many more? That's the question we need to ask. I made a statement that I want to read from, responding to a minister in the presidency who said something that is totally unacceptable, something that is unbelievable, And I'm going to ask our technical team to put that statement on the screen so that we go through it together. Now, we have two guests. They are going to tell us what we need to do, but we also want to hear from you what we must do to ensure that if government does not move, they are dragging their feet, that we need to take action. So while I'm waiting for that statement to be placed on the screen, I want us to know that there is no problem. I remind you, actually, you know that. There is no problem without a solution. So let me, because maybe struggling to find it, let me read to you the statement that we released on the 11th of this month, October. I'm reading now from that statement. The African Christian Democratic Party is saddened by the deaths of the 5 children in Naledi who allegedly consumed poison snacks from a Spaza shop. On behalf of the ACDP, I wish to convey our sincere, heartfelt condolences to the families of the deceased. We note the remarks made by the minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, at a media briefing yesterday in reaction to the tragic deaths of the deceased children. She stated that, and I quote, "As South Africans, we must take a decision. We are the ones who buy at these Spaza shops. We must take a decision as a society that we are not buying at the Spaza shops where we are not sure where they are buying their products from. We are not going to buy at the Spaza shops where the Spaza shops are not registered in their municipalities." The minister further said, "As South Africans, as we go to the Spaza shops, we must demand that we want to see your registration certificate." Okay. Now, do you think this is correct? I don't think so. Now, let me read what should also be on your screen. The ACDP categorically disagrees with the minister's sentiments. It is unreasonable for Minister Ntshavheni to expect consumers, including children who purchase from these Spaza shops, to perform duties for which now I'm lost. Okay, let me read that paragraph again. The ACDP categorically disagrees with the minister's sentiments. It is unreasonable for Minister Ntshavheni to expect consumers, including children who purchase from these Spaza shops, to perform duties from which the government should be responsible. Moreover, it is not the duty of citizens to verify that the food they purchase or consume is prepared in a facility that adheres to health and safety standards. It is not definitely the responsibility of citizens. This responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the Department of Health, Environment, Trade, Industry and Competition, and Small Business Development. Additionally, the ACDP considers it highly irresponsible for the minister to propose that the public should check the business licenses on Spaza shops, as this could lead to potential tension, confrontations, and possibly even violence. Now, you tell me, let me stop there. You tell me, if maybe let's say 10 people or customers in a day go to a Spaza shop and they demand to see the license to trade, do you think they will voluntarily say with a smile, "Here, I am licensed"? No, no, no. Someone will ask question, but who are you? Who are you to ask me such a question? So I think it was irresponsible for the minister Ntshavheni to say that that the public must ask for or even demand to see the business certificates. Now, obviously, we're going to hear from you. What do you think happened to the minister before she made that statement? Is she covering for the guilty? Is she covering for inspectors who are not doing their job? We, as the ACDP, say we reject those statements, and we reject the attempt to give people who are battling at home, many of them not employed. That's why they go to Spaza shops that are nearer them. For them to be given the responsibility of checking the licenses, it is wrong. This is government responsibility. This is government's responsibility. Now, having said that, I want to, okay. Now, Palesa Yates says, in Ekurhuleni, we have only 20 registered Spaza shops out of 6,000. Can you believe that? Now, Palesa Yates is a councillor at Ekurhuleni. That's why she has that information. She says, I asked a question in council, and they said the inspections are being done, but it is not true. And whoever gave you that answer, Councillor Yates, lied to you. They are not done. We have Spaza shops around us, and we never see inspectors, so it is a lie. Thank you for telling us. Imagine 20 inspectors, and out of how many Spaza shops? 6,000. So, yeah, 20 registered Spazas. So, meaning 6,000, more than 6,000, 5,880 are not registered. So this must change. We must demand that this must change. This must change. All right, as we know that we have our councillor from the Nelson Mandela Metro, Lance Grootboom, who, when he was the MMC for health between 2017 and 2021, did an excellent job. Set an example for all municipalities to see what MMCs for health should be doing. Unfortunately, they did not take the lesson from our councillor. And then he is going to be the last to speak. We have a food safety expert that we had before. We want to hear from her. What should be done? On paper, there are regulations. Does she think government is taking the problem of unhealthy food seriously? Why are they reluctant to do something about this? And what advice would you give to the ACDP what to do when we know that there are Spaza shops that are not monitored, when we don't know that whether they are registered or not? All right? Now, obviously, or maybe let me change and put in Lance first, our councillor first, okay? So that the expert will come last and say, okay, ACDP, I heard that you have done 1, 2, 3. I suggest that you do this additionally to what you have done to ensure that there is order in our municipalities and Spaza shops become healthier. So can we have Councillor Lance Grootboom again, our former MMC of Health, who did an excellent job. Thank you, sir. You did a great job that we are grateful to you for, grateful to God for, and we are hoping that our government has some stubborn people who don't want to listen, so that they're going to listen. Thank you for being with us tonight. He told me that he had 30 minutes to drive because their council finished late, so he rushed to be with us tonight. So thank you very much for being with us. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, President, and to our ACDP family and those who are watching tonight. It's a privilege of tonight being here and to talk on this important topic of Spaza shops and basically about food hygiene and shops operating that is handling those food stuff. So, President, from my side, I was the MMC here in Nelson Mandela Bay in 2017, and I was appointed MMC of Public Health. And what we have done in Nelson Mandela Bay, at the time there was a listeriosis outbreak, and it was something that was found in Poloni at that time. But a lot of people got sick, and many municipalities did not know what to do. And what we have done is, because our president has said in our manifesto that we've launched in the 2016 elections, that we must make sure that we visit Spaza shops to see if Spaza shops are complying with the Food, Cosmetic and Disinfectants Act, and we should hold them accountable. At that specific time, what I've done, because I was heading that portfolio, I implemented that was in our manifesto. So basically, what happened is we started what we call a food blitz program, because we wanted to make sure we address the issue of listeriosis, but at the same time make sure that food handling shops are compliant with legislation. So this specific blitz program, it basically consisted of a EHP workers, which is environment health practitioners, and the environment these health practitioners was going to go out to different shops to see if these businesses are registered, and they would do certain tests on some of their food, maybe, and on their oil for those who are frying stuff. So it was a big operation. But President, I have to explain to our members that how did this thing came about. The issue was our municipality was, especially the public health municipal department, was not capacitated. They did not have enough EHP workers. And as a result, it was very difficult to deal with Spaza shops because there was a lot of them and there was limited EHP workers. And we had to get to the problem of listeriosis. So what we've done is I went back, I told them that we have to do something. And they could not, they said, we don't have the numbers. We only got 35 EHP workers, and we are 1.2 million people in Nelson Mandela Bay. It's not sufficient. We need at least one EHP worker for every 10,000 citizens. So we need over 100 EHP workers if we have to cover the whole municipality. You know, we went back, we prayed about this, we asked God for wisdom to guide us. God gave us a word. We went back, the Lord said, what do you have? Use what you have and you will be successful. So what we did is we started a program where we say all 35 EHP workers will go to different shops. We'll start in central CBD areas where there's a lot of Spaza shops or shops that is operating. We'll go specifically to food handling shops that sell food. We went to them. We took all of our EHP workers. They were dressed in white robes. We took the media. We invited them as well. We made sure that safety and security was with us. In case we had to close down shops, we have to take action. So we launched that project, and that project was a success. We managed to close down shops every day. We managed to find shops that was not complying. And in most of these shops, they were selling expiry goods. We removed those expiry goods from the shelves. We find those shops, and some of them we closed down, especially when they did not have license. And at that time, we were looking at specifically at certain things because there's legislation that governs how a shop should manage food. And the act specifically is the Foodstuff, Cosmetic and Disinfectants Act, as well as the National Health Act. These acts deals with shops that handle food, and it is very specific that they're looking at harmful products, they're looking at labeling and advertising, they're looking at hygiene requirements, and they're looking at waste trade agreements, what are they doing with their waste, look at sanitation, etc. So where shops were not complying, for example, we look at, do they have a certificate of acceptability? Then we look at, do they have a waste trade agreement with the municipality? What's happening with their waste? We're looking at their oil. Do they change it regularly? So our EHPs were having some equipment where they can test all of this stuff on the spot, and then they can see if this product is harmful. So we had all of that. That project was a success. It was so good that it won the National Environmental Health Award in 2017. It got the attention of the Minister of Environmental Health. And the minister decided that all municipalities in the country should follow the example of Nelson Mandela Bay at that time. So there was regulations issued in line with the Foodstuff, Cosmetic and Disinfectants Act and the National Health Act to make sure that there should be enforcement of the regulations. So municipalities now has been mandated to make sure that they go out and they investigate shops and see whether they are complying with the legislation that governs or that regulates them, especially dealing in food. So, President, this was very successful. Now, the challenge now is, and President has highlighted it, and mentioned also what was said by the minister in terms of people that has to go out and check. And I strongly believe that that is not the prerogative of our residents to go and check. The municipality, which is on the ground, should take action. The legislation is very, very clear that EHP workers has the power, and that power is to go into shops to check whether they are complying with the Foodstuff, Cosmetic and Disinfectants Act, as well as the National Health Act. And if they don't comply, the enforcement measures that is there is that they can close down the shop, they can request for remedial action, and they can fine owners. So that is there. But what I've noticed also, President, is that many municipalities does not have sufficient number of EHP workers. So the EHP workers that they have is not sufficient to cover a metro or maybe a municipality, because they cannot go out to cover all the shops. Hence, there must be, I believe there should be a lot of regulation. Municipalities must capacitate themselves. They should money aside to make sure that for 10,000 citizens, there should be one EHP to cover the number of people, shops that's out there, because we have now a big problem with Spaza shops operating without license, selling expiry goods, and nobody's going there to check what they are selling to see if they are complying with the legislation. Now, our project that was implemented in Nelson Mandela Bay was successful, and our municipalities still today are doing these food blitz programs because they are continuing it, because they know that it was a successful initiative under ACDP's leadership when they were in charge of that department. And like I said, it won awards, and because it was a great project and initiative. But like I said, this initiative came about because there was existing legislation. It came about because of prayer and God answering prayer by using what we have. Now, I have to say this because there might be municipalities or people from different listening to this. Yes, you might have a number of EHP workers, a limited number of EHP workers, and it's difficult to go out to monitor all these shops. But we were very strategic in Nelson Mandela Bay. We invited the media to go with us. That's why our program was on carte blanche. They covered it because we invited all the major media houses when we were going into butcheries, into Spaza shops to check how they operate. And there we will run our test. We will look at their oil, if they're selling food, if they're making food there, if they have anything that is expired, we will check on that. We'll test it there. We look at labeling, etc., etc., and we'll take action there while the media is there. And that send a message to every shop in Nelson Mandela Bay to say that we are coming for you. You better come forward or we will deal with you. The beauty of our project was so successful that the municipality had to open another, what they call, say, not an account, but an account under public health where businesses that was not registered, that used to operate without registration, started to basically register. And they came forward, they applied for through a proper process license, and we had the ability afterwards to monitor them and to see that they comply. And the shops starting to comply. The ones that were closed remain closed. And so that's how successful that project was. And like I said, Nelson Mandela Bay is still continuing. That's why you don't hear a lot of these cases in our city. This is because of a successful project from the ACDP. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grootboom, for that good report. Thank you for coming with a project that won the award and that was exemplary to municipalities who want to assist their members with access to Spaza shops where health regulations are absorbed. Thank you so much. We now have a lady we had before. Now, I want you, in case you ask a question, but we spoke about Spaza shops before. It's true. But we did not have as many deaths as we are having now, and as many people who are complaining about food poisoning because of the food they got from the Spaza shops. We cannot ignore this matter. So if the next weeks there will still be more people who are complaining that they bought food from the nearest Spaza shop and they were poisoned by that food, we'll have to bring the subject again. And I'm hoping that we will have other new ideas of what we must do to make sure that government hears us. They must hear us. They must insist that municipalities apply the rules. They must insist. And for them to insist, it is us as the ACDP members, as people who are affected by these food poisoning in our areas, that have to put pressure on them. Okay. Now we have Tobile Mokgotlo, who's a food safety expert. She, among other things, must tell us that what they are doing. They are food safety experts. What are they doing? What are they doing? Why are they putting any pressure on anyone or government? Municipalities, maybe because they are in their communities. What are they doing? Because I'm sure what she's going to say is going to be good to the ear. Good to the ear. Government has many good policies, but implementation is their challenge. So, welcome, Tobile. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for being with us tonight. You heard what the ACDP has been doing through our councillors. When we are given an opportunity to govern, to be an MMC, we do wonders, as we have heard. So what, in addition to what we have done so far, what Councillor Grootboom has spoken about, what in addition can we do something to ensure that food poisoning now becomes something of the past? Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, President, and good evening to ACDP family. So I totally agree with Councillor Grootboom. Monitoring is the way to go. These inspections that are supposed to be conducted by government, they're supposed to ensure that, everything is monitored on regular basis. So I totally agree that monitoring is the way to go to ensure that you deter instances such as this. And earlier when you mentioned that Minister Humbuzo mentioned that it's up to the consumer that they must demand, to see the certificates. It's for me, it's totally ridiculous, because here we are speaking of kids as young as 3-year-old who bought, these food products. You can't expect a 3-year-old, to demand a certificate from an establishment, who's obviously not complying, because by government regulations, the certificate of acceptability should be displayed, when you walk in. So obviously, if somebody is not displaying their certificate, it means they don't have it. And in our talking about our townships, people, they're sort of in a position where they have limited options. It's either you buy from a Spaza, or you must take a taxi to town or somewhere, or maybe the nearest mall, of which it's the money that you don't have. So the Spaza is here, so you'll only buy where it's near to you. You won't have extra money to take a taxi to town or maybe to the nearest mall. So it is very sad, that the government is not doing their job, and they expect us, to do their job. But I think now it's so sad we've come to a point that I feel we need to stand up and do something. I think I mentioned earlier to you that, I would like to propose, to SADP that maybe we can form, a food safety program where we collect, samples from this, sort of like in a form of monitoring from our side. We walk in as consumers. You collect samples of products that especially, the ones that the critical ones, the dairies, the cold meats, those are the products that are prone to spoilage. So collecting samples and then checking, fridges, if they are maintaining the cold chain. If a fridge is supposed to be at -5 degrees, it has to be maintained at that. They can't keep meat maybe at +5 degrees Celsius, because obviously it's gonna go off, and then it's gonna pass its expiry date, and people will buy that meat. So if we conduct our own monitoring, as active citizens, we collect these samples, and then we take them for testing. Then when we come back, we confronting government to you have facts, you have scientific backup to say, this is what is happening, this is what people are eating. Even in instances where people claim that they are selling beef, whereas maybe it's not beef, maybe it's cat meat or whatever type of meat, you can conduct a DNA test on that product to actually see if is it actually meat from beef, or is it actually is meat from pork. Because to some people, it's religious, practices. They are not allowed to eat pork. So maybe somebody is selling pork mince, and then they label it as beef mince or chicken mince. So you can actually conduct tests, to see if is it really beef or is it pork, or if with honey, we speak of, when we speak of food fraud, people will sell a syrup and label it honey. You can conduct a DNA test, to see if it contains the DNA strand of honey, or is it just, syrup sugar that has been labeled, as something that it's not. So I think as ACDP, we can take, a stance, where we conduct our own monitoring in these establishments that do not comply, because government is not doing anything. And as Councillor mentioned, government, I don't think they have enough EHPs to conduct this. I'm not sure about the numbers, but the last time I heard, the numbers, they just did not make sense. They did not have enough, practitioners to conduct all these inspections. And our company, we tried a number of times, to say, here we are food safety experts, we can come in and assist you guys. But we were not, given that chance. I understand that we are not registered with the Health Council, but they don't have capacity, and we have expertise, in the field, so they can use us, like for training, because people who handle food, you speak about hygiene, you have to train them. They have to know, because you can't tell somebody that you need to handle your products in a hygienic manner, but you don't give them training, because the regulation that they need to comply with, it states clearly that everyone who handles food has to be trained, in hygiene, has to be trained in, it's a regulation R368, so they have to be trained. It's a regulation that speaks to food hygiene, food practices, the way you handle food, how food should be transported. Sometimes, you see people who transport meat. Meat is very critical. When you speak about meat, you speak about dairy, those are very critical products, when it comes to food safety. You see people who transport meat in a van, it's not refrigerated. I always cringe, because people are going to eat, that meat, kids, they are going to eat that product, and it's really, really, really not healthy. It's really, really not safe for the consumer. Thank you, President.
All right, I want to ask you two questions. You say we must collect samples and take them for testing.
Yes.
Where do you take them for testing, and how many people will have access to those places where they can be tested? I thought when we discussed this matter a minute, you said that there are testers, there are instruments that are reasonable and that we can buy to do the testing ourselves. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Okay, so for testing, when we take samples, there are a number of food testing laboratories around in Gauteng. Everywhere there are a number. I know in Midrand there's one food safety, I forgot the name, but there's a number of them that do testing. So what we do when we take samples, you have a cooler box, because you have to maintain its integrity. So we'll have a cooler box maybe in the car, then you take it for, maybe we can do our sampling maybe once a month or once a week. It depends on what you are testing. And the instruments that will be handy for us to have when we do these sort of like inspections, they are not official. We can have a thermometer. I think for me a thermometer is critical for me to have, in order to check, especially the fridges, where they keep the meat, where they keep the cold meats. The cold meats is that's where we got the outbreak with the listeria, so the cold meats and the dairy products. So to make sure that those fridges, they maintain the temperature that it's supposed to be, because some of the fridges, they will display that it's at maybe 0 or -2, but when you actually maybe stick in your thermometer, you find that it's at 2 degrees Celsius. So you can, monitor such things. And then with food samples, you take a sample, you put it in a container, then you take it to a food laboratory.
Obviously, it's going to be a challenge to go to Pick n Pay, see a fridge there, and just go there and stick your thermometer.
No, actually, no.
Okay. No.
No, a thermometer it's like, a small, like this size. Then you can sort of like, I mean, you are standing there, you're a customer, you just stick it in, and then like for a few seconds, then it will give you a reading.
All right. Lastly, about DNA testing. How many
Yes.
people in townships can have access to laboratories that do DNA testing? And what an average cost for doing a DNA testing on food, on meat, for example? If you take it to the laboratory, people must have an idea. How much are we talking about?
So when you say how many people will have access, you mean people who will want to pay for themselves to have such testing done?
Yes.
Okay. Because there are no laboratories in the townships. So I was saying that we do those, those sampling ourselves. And I'm not sure how much for a DNA testing is, but I know like for when I speak of monitoring testing, like when you monitor testing for hygiene, you'll test for bacteria like E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, such bacteria. They range between 50 rands and 150. So for DNA, I still need to find out how much it will cost for that.
Okay. Okay, members, you got it. Thank you very much, Tobile and Councillor Grootboom, for your presentations. I'm sure you have ideas and you have questions. We have these two friends who made their submissions. You are free to ask any of them a question for clarity in particular or advice on the situation that you've come across in your area. So we are opening the floor now for questions so that the experts can answer our questions. The first one to ask the question is Tlotliso Mputi. He says, our government seem not to care about what happens to the public because they can afford to go to overseas hospitals, while mere humans also suffer bad service at hospitals, a double whammy. It is true. Totally, so you're right. No, not a question, but a comment which is accurate. Many times government leaders don't care about the health of people in their communities because they can easily go overseas. They go overseas. When the Lord gives us the opportunity and the honor of governing in this country, we have to talk about whether our ministers will be allowed to go overseas for treatment, whether the president will be allowed to go overseas for treatment and leave the people who pay their salary behind. I think if a minister or government is doing a good job, they need to be proud of the fact that people can test their products, can test their workings, that can test. I mean, we want to have good hospitals. If there is care, we can have good hospitals. Some people say, but these things are expensive, we don't money. Hey, we have billions of rents that have been stolen. Stolen! And not much is being done about recovering those billions. So money is there. Money is there. But unfortunately, it is being looted, it is being stolen, including by government officials and in some cases, ministers. So let us work towards getting a godly government that will be led by men and women who are honest because they fear God, they know that whatever they do, he is watching them. So let's work hard, ladies and gentlemen, to change the status quo. Councillor Yates, she says, may I ask our food expert if she thinks that poison could have contaminated the Spaza biscuits? Madam Tobile?
Yes, definitely. You see, President, this thing is two ways. You know, sometimes when you say food poisoning, we do not, separate the two, because I think there's food that is poisoned because somebody added poison to it, and then we still say food poisoning. And food poisoning, as in the food industry, when we refer to food poisoning, we refer to food that has gone, maybe has spoiled, and then has had microorganisms that produced toxins, poison, then hence we say food poisoning. But then there's this other aspect where food, where a poison like Retex has been added, because I think in some of these cases that we've had in the news, some of it, I think they suspected that some of the food, rat poison was added into the food. So definitely, I think that is a possibility that some of this food poison was added, and then some of the food that is killing, these kids is due to spoilage.
Councillor Grootboom, if you want to add, say, you are most welcome to add to what is being said. My question is, in many Spaza shops, you have dangerous and poisonous items who are not put away from too far away from food, from items that are consumed by members. So my question is, does the proximity have an effect on food that is close to DDT, jig, rat poison, and so on? Is proximity a factor or not? That's for both of you.
Proximity is definitely a factor. It's part of the food safety management system. So you have to segregate, you can't keep your food products with your cleaning products and even your pest control stations. They have to be designated and they have to be kept away from, the food processing areas. That's definitely the proximity, it is a factor.
All right. Okay.
I agree, President. I remember with our EH specifically went to shops, and what they've done is they've looked at where the food was located. So when food was not in their proper location, they would inform the shop owner, and they will tell him, does he know this? If he doesn't know that, then they know there should be training done. And I think it was explained earlier that the municipality should also provide training to shop owners as to how to handle and manage food, especially those businesses that's operating and handling with food. So these were things that I think I've seen it in all the shop visits. So I think proximity and that it does play a role. And there is, like I said, like what was explained, that shop owners should comply, because the management of it is there, and there's regulations that governs that.
Now let me ask you, Councillor, when you were MMC for health, or let me rather say before you were MMC for health, do you remember your municipality training shopkeepers or Spaza shop owners how to place different fruits in their store to ensure that they comply even with proximity of different items? Do you remember before you became MMC whether there was any training done? because many of these guys obviously are acting from ignorance. They are not told, they are not trained. So if it was not happening before, is it happening today in your municipality? Because that's another important issue that we must raise to protect our people, to ensure that they don't put even bread close to items that are dangerous, that are poisonous. So do you remember your municipality doing that? And can we try and find out if there are municipalities that are training shopkeepers to do that? Now, what do you do? Because in some places, in most places, Spaza shops, the majority of people running Spaza shops are foreigners, okay? They are not locals, they are foreigners. And some of them even battle with English. So can the municipalities spend money on training these foreigners who in most cases are better trained than the locals? Now, what do we do? How are we going to handle this? Because some of them, they may have been trained by observing their fathers, observing their uncles. Because I remember when we grew up, you would see boys in the shops or children in the shops with the fathers, and the fathers, particularly the Indian community, training them, okay, training them. But when it comes to a formal training where they are told, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. Are you aware of any municipality doing that?
President, what I do know, before we took office in public health, there was no training like that done that I've seen. But I know afterwards, our tenure, training became important. Remember, President, whenever there is a business that is handling food, they have to register with the municipality. And they get what they call a certificate of acceptability. Now, if that business register, the municipality should make sure that what happens to the waste of this business, because it will generate waste. So they don't be treated like they're not treated like the same like domestic customers. They are different. So they went into a waste trade agreement. So municipalities should have policies like that. In our case, when they open, they register. And when they register, then our EHP workers are called out to inspect. And that is where the training takes place if they are selling warm food or they are selling just general food. That training happens. We are doing it. It's happening now with daycares. Where daycares open, they go out to train them how to store their foods, under what temperatures should it meet, stuff like that. All of that is there. So this is something that municipalities must do. But like I explained earlier, with the EHPs that municipalities not capacitated, there's a challenge because there's not a number of EHPs and they can't get to these shops. That's why what would work for the ACDP is to put pressure on municipalities to set budgets aside to appoint more EHPs, because I know there's a number of vacancies. And then these EHPs will naturally comply with the regulations, like I said, that's out there. So, President, so I see the training. It's difficult because they are not capacitated and they can't get to all these shops that's coming up. And most of them are illegal, so they don't register and they don't know about them.
Well, thank you very much. We have run out of time. I must say thank you very much to Councillor Grootboom, who has shared his experience with us tonight, and also Tobile Mukhotlwa. Thank you very much for making time to be with us tonight to share from your wisdom, your experiences also. Thank you very much. And we hope that our ACDP members who heard it tonight are going to become activists. Okay, activists, visit your nearest Spaza shop and monitor and check what is happening there. And if at all you are able to communicate with them, ask them about compliance, about certificates and all those things. Now, some of them, obviously, people are now buying through the window. You're not allowed to go inside. So in cases where you can't go inside, how are you going to check the labels and the expiry dates and so on. Because when you say to them, open for me to come in, they will become suspicious. So that's another challenge we have. How are we going to go inside? Because they lock themselves behind these buckler bars. Many of them buckler bars, they have a little hole where you stick in your hand when you want to give them money to purchase something. So the Lord has to help us, but we must win this battle. These people are destroying the lives of our children. We must win this battle. And I'm hoping that new ideas will also come from our members who sees the importance of standing up, because this poisoning of children is a very serious matter that we cannot ignore. Okay, thank you very much. If you have ideas again, you can still email to ACDP, info@ACDP, and info@acdp.org.za. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. The Lord bless you. Good night.